Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ken's Corner Podcast. And I am your host, Ken. But let's go ahead and get this show started off right and get stuff adjusted. Got a new light. My other light wasn't working at the time. So testing 1, 4, 3, testing 1 to the 4 to the 3. It is all love, baby. Welcome to the Ken's Corner Podcast. And as I said before, I am your host, Ken. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today. You could have honestly been doing anything else, but you chose to be here with me. So these are a few things that I would need for you to do. If you can please go ahead and first subscribe to the Ken's Corner podcast, wherever you consume your podcast information. So I'm everywhere from iTunes to Spotify to Google Podcasts, everything. I'm everywhere. So you can go ahead and subscribe. Also, I need you to like, share, and retweet. And please give me a rating so I know how I'm doing. I'm also welcome to my YouTube viewership. So this is something new again. I told you I was incorporating a new interactive podcast. So that's where I'm at right now. So I'm also on YouTube at Ken's Corner Podcast. And if you so feel inclined to be a part of the Trust fan. I don't have a fan club. I have people that I trust. And hopefully I'll build a relationship where you can trust what I have to say. Whether you agree or disagree, just know that it comes from a place of love and also a place of information. And so I can't get my hat straight. That is where I'm at with that. So please, you can see the Cash App scrolling at the bottom of your screen. It's Cash App, $, capital KEN, capital GOODRUM. That's Ken Goodrum. That's Cash App me at $, capital KEN, capital GOODRUM. And last but not least, you can also interact with me on my website, which is www.kenscorner.co. That's www.kenscorner.co. So welcome to episode number 85 of the Ken's Corner Podcast. And so I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to take my time, but I'm going to be concise. There's a lot to unpack. And what I want to be able to do is not necessarily convince you one way or another. I just want to be able to open up the conversation to be able to see and think about something a little different. Yesterday was a landmark day in our history as a nation. Although the verses was arguably one of the tightest verses I've ever seen. Shout out to Redman, shout out to Meth. Great performance on verses in the Triller app. It was a concert. They brought out Keith Murray. They brought out K Solo. They brought out EPMD, the RZA, Inspector Deck. I mean, it was a great time. It wasn't a historic time because of just 420 for all of those who consume marijuana or marijuana products. You had your time. But it was a landmark because of what happened in the George Floyd case. Derek Chauvin was found guilty of manslaughter. And it was something that was so emotionally draining and emotionally celebratory because in my lifetime, I've actually seen a real conviction of murder at the hands of someone that was irresponsible who was supposed to protect society. And when the verdict was read, and I said this yesterday on my personal social media account, and I just said that I sat there and I cried, and I sat there and it was tears of just joy. It was tears of frustration. It was just so many emotions going on. But it was also tears because I know that this was a small step within the bigger picture of what police reform should look like. But at the end of the day, my heart went out to the Floyd family. My heart went out to his friends and everybody who was involved in his life. The fact that they continued to have to grieve. However, there was another step towards some type of healing, whatever that looked like for them. it was another step. It was another step of closure. It was another step. So then, like I said, the verses came on, and I was just, into it. And as I was getting ready for bed, I saw one of, I consider her like a mentee, or, just one of my former students, and I saw that she was protesting in Columbus. So I'm looking at her, I said, what's going on? And I'm not knowing what is going on because after the George Floyd case, I wasn't really consuming any type of news. And then I heard about the situation of Ma'Khia Bryant, and hopefully I'm pronouncing her first name right. Ma'Khia, but Bryant. And I heard what happened from her lips. And then I heard that, what was going on. And so I looked into what was going on, and then I did something that I don't normally do, which is I watched the video. I had stopped watching videos of the death of our people because it's very traumatic. And especially coming to find out that she was 15 years old. And I said, okay, I just sat here and watched a child get killed. And as I sat there and I watched it several times because I, for the life of me, didn't understand the complexities and everything that was going on. So I'm going to share a couple stories with you to show you reason why I named this particular podcast Trusting Your Eyes. Is because going back to the George Floyd case, the prosecutor eloquently spoke, you can trust your eyes. You can trust your eyes. Everybody saw what happened. Trust your eyes. Paraphrasing, but I know the trust your eyes aspect was the main point that he was driving home. Conversely, the defense said that he kept talking about what a reasonable officer would do. And his driving point, what was reasonable. And so I became triggered because I'm sitting here and saying, I trust my eyes. Nothing that man did was reasonable. And so then as we fast forward to the young girl, Ma'Khia Bryant, I sat there and I said, I know what my eyes saw. And so this is what I want to get into today as far as what we see and why we see and how do you trust your eyes. So I'm going to take the advice of a friend of mine who was at one of the earlier listeners of my podcast. And he told me, he said, you don't tell people enough about your expertise in the areas that you are an expert in. He said, because people need to be able to connect with that. And so I've worked with young people for over 25 years. I have literally worked from infants all the way to collegiate students. I've done it all. I have mentored. I've been tutor counselor. I've been hall director. I've been a football coach from every level, from Pee Wee to Division II football. I've worked in the Juvenile Justice Center. I've worked in the juvenile mental health area. I've you name it for children, I've done it. All right. The only thing I haven't done is I didn't work in, let's see. Yeah, I've worked there. I've done it all. I've done it all. And so I've looked at, children from a standpoint of, being able to understand their psyche, to understand what's going on, and understand how, they are able to function. All right. I've been formally trained in it. I've been formally trained in de-escalation when it comes to juveniles. I've done it. I also, and the reason why I brought football into the situation is because as a football coach, one of the favorite things I love to do is watch film. All right. I watch film. I break film down. I can break film down to every position, but my position was offensive, defensive line. And so I look for tendencies. I look for those type of things. And yeah, so I help my son, every week we watched film as he was coming through high school. So that's my area of expertise. And so when I looked at people in their comments on different social media platforms, there was a big divide of whether or not, and I want to be very respectful of the family, of the Bryant family. So first of all, my heart and my prayers and my condolences go out to the Bryant family. Your daughter, your granddaughter, your niece, your cousin, your friend should still be here today. So I want to make sure I say that. So I watched the film. And another thing that I have been fortunate enough to and be blessed enough to have is I have a pool of resources of people in professions that are not my profession. So specifically in this particular situation, I have several friends and brothers who are police officers across the nation. And the reason why that's important is going to tie into what type of eyes you trust. I've broken up many a fight. I work security. I've even worked security at a real shady place. And I was telling the story just today. I was trained by a police officer on the way to the event of what to do as a security guard. And I received a bulletproof vest and a gun. And yeah, I worked that a couple weeks. And so I have some type of experience. However, I have absolutely, positively no experience in being a police officer. I don't know the first thing about being a police officer. I don't know what the physical requirements are. I don't know what the educational requirements are. And I don't know with this the psychiatric, what you have to do to be. So I know nothing about that. I have very little, no training. I'm familiar with certain tactical aspects. I am familiar with that from a fundamental best practices standpoint, but I am not well versed in tactical things as it comes to police. I am not trained in the police way of de-escalating situations when they come to the public. I'm not formally trained in that. So again, going back to the eyes, I tie it all in to say, because one of my favorite rapper, or to me the greatest MC of all times, is Andre 3000 Three Stacks, and he said, "Faith is what you make it. The rest of us, faith is what you make it." That's the hardest shit in MC Ram, but that's a whole nother point. And faith and you believe in comes by what you know. The only reason you know the God that you know, whatever you call him or her, is because you were taught that, or through your experience. So your experience is anecdotal, and it's narrow because it's just your experience. You cannot necessarily prove what you think you believe. But conversely, can't nobody disprove what you believe. So if you say you believe in the Holy Ghost, if you believe in tongues, if you say you've seen miracles happen and things of that nature, I'm not going to sit here and deny and say that you didn't, because you've seen it. You have been in situations where you heard a little voice inside of you say, "Hey, don't do that." Some people call it the universe. Some people call it the Holy Spirit. Some people call it different things. But in each one of those instances, they're looking at it from the eyes based upon what they know to believe and what they, what their faith level is or what their experience level is. And so when we're looking at this particular situation with this tape, the tape that was, the body cam footage that was released, many of us looked at that with absolutely positively no police experience whatsoever. It's going to be a tough conversation tonight. However, I just want to give you some nuggets to think about. So you have very little to no experience what it means to be a police officer. So you're already at a disadvantage of what your eyes are being able to see. You're already at a disadvantage. The second thing, if you've never been in that situation, all right, you may know somebody that broken up a fight with knives, but have you ever done it? I have. I've broken up fights with weapons, with bats and the knife. I've done it. That's not necessarily to say the reason or how I did it was the right way, but I've done it. I've done it. I've been jumped before. I have been on the opposite end of being jumped. Nobody had any deadly weapons. So I know what it's like to be jumped. I know what it feels like to, as the seconds and stuff happen, I know what it feels like to get in there, actually start throwing. And I know what it feels like for every one punch you throw, 6 or 7 coming your way. I've been there before. So my eyes, when I'm looking at it, and again, I'm looking at it from my eyes as somebody who works with the youth and who has worked in the prison system, who juvenile prison system, excuse me, or detention. They don't like to say prison, or jail, at many different levels. I know when a fight breaks off, what we were trained to do. And so for me, when I first saw it, I'm like, dang, man, he came in hot like that. And so I made a post. I don't think I went overboard with the post, but I made a post, and several people had, various views on it. But one of my friends, who I love to life, texted me and said, hey, I know it's hard to take, but the police officer was in the right. And so I woke up to that text. It took me a minute because I had to go to work, get settled. I read the text again because also we are all of us, myself, everybody included, we are at a very sensitive, emotional place in our lives, all of us. Anybody say that they're, I just think they're lying. So therefore, our emotions are very, at a heightened sense. I am a firm believer. I care about your feelings. I care about feelings because I'm an emotional person. However, feelings and emotions should be based in some type of fact. So if it's not based in facts, it's just emotions all over the place. And so I'm looking at the situation like, okay, I have somebody who I trust say, hey, I know what you think it is. It's a sad situation, but honestly, the officer's in the right. And I said to myself, nah, fam, like, nah, like something don't sit right with this. And so one of the best advice, one of the top 3 pieces of advice I've ever been given was by my mother the day of my wedding. In my wedding, just like the bride is walked down by the father, my mother walked me down. And it's a picture of it. She's looking at me, and I never forget, she said, the only bit of advice I have to give you is you don't always have to be right. Never forgot that. Never forgot that, because I'm a debater. But it was kind of odd. Like, why would she tell me that during my, like, what was that about? And it took me a few years to really understand what my mother was saying as far as marriage, but also holistically, we all want to be right, but in order to get the truth, we have to be willing to be wrong. In order to seek truth, not your truth, the truth, you have to be willing to be wrong. Going back to the eyes. And so I said, well, let me get some more. I have a lot of resources. Let me start just calling people. So where I work, there's a resource officer or police officer, excuse me, and she's a lady. And so I asked her, could I talk to her? She came down to my class and she talked to me. And as we were talking, I found myself, I'm an active listener, but I also started finding myself really listening more to her heart. And she admitted she saw the video. She admitted how it shook her, but she said, I need to look at it again because of some, procedural aspects. So I said, okay. So we just started talking about policing in general. And she just gave me a wealth of knowledge. Some things that I knew, but other things that I didn't know, which I'll get into in a few minutes. So then I went to another friend of mine. And when I texted him, he said, I already knew you was going to text me. I knew what this was about. So, and he just went down a litany of things that from his standpoint. And so the point I want to make is to those people who and if this shoe doesn't fit you, then please don't wear it. All right. If you're a person that feel like you have enough information to make an informed opinion one way or another, that's not what I'm here to say. What I'm here to say is be able to be honest and say, okay, well, what kind of eyes am I looking at this from? All right. You may know a police officer, but you're not the police officer. You may been into a fight, but you probably never broke up a fight. You may have known somebody to break up a fight. You're right. In certain school districts, in certain areas, people have been breaking up fights forever. All right. People have been breaking up fights forever. And some outcomes have been good. I know of several outcomes and stories about people that went to go break up fights, and the person that broke up the fight got killed. Both people who were fighting are alive. The person who broke up the fight got killed. I've seen that. I've seen situations where, and I've been in a situation. I was telling this story. I was in a situation where at one of my former places of employment, I got a call from the police officers, two of them, and said there was a student with a gun in his room. The first thing I said to myself, well, why are you calling me? I'm not the police. That's your job. That's not my job. Well, we don't want to have a big incident, bring the SWAT, boom, boom, boom. Hey, please see if you can go talk to him. I have no formal training in negotiations. I don't have any formal training. But because I have relationships with people, I went in there. Me and this dude got into a, semi-argument. He was like, I'm not leaving here. I'm not giving you my gun. Like, look, you got to give up your gun. You got to get come on, this is just really a bad look. I went in there unarmed, nothing, with the police standing outside because they, for whatever reason, I don't know if they were scared or I don't know. I don't want to but I end up talking this person down, him giving up the gun, and him being able to be walked out and be processed and all that other stuff. I'm not saying I'm the man, but these are the things that I've been able to do. However, I've never been in a hostage negotiation. I don't know the first thing what it takes to do that. I've never rolled up on a scene where all these guns are drawn and stuff. Like I wouldn't know how to react to that. And so one of the things that I got from the third person I talked to, it was his sentiment, and he didn't even know I was doing this podcast until later. He was saying, this ain't TV. He said police are trained. When they pull that gun, go for center mass. He said they're trained to do that, man. He said as much as people don't want to stomach that, that's what they're trained to do. He said, and he's also an instructor, a tactical instructor. He's a firearms instructor. I mean, this guy has devoted a majority of his life to firearms training and all those things. So I trust him. He know what he's talking about. He said, that guy probably don't even know how many bullets he shot. He don't even know how many rounds he shot. He said he probably thought he shot one because the body tenses up when you're going through different things. That part I do know. So that's why when you go through tactical training and things like that, there's a certain, repetitions they want you to learn, and certain situations they put you in, because it's one thing to stand in the firing range and you shoot your gun. That's just like on a Karate Kid when Mr. Miyagi said, boards don't hit back. Those little paper things that we all displaying, and we all say, look at my grouping and all that other stuff. How calm are you going to be when somebody's coming at you with a gun or coming at you with a knife? All right. The next thing is, if you're looking at it from the standpoint, I saw a lot of comments saying, well, that girl was about to stab that girl. And so the overall comment was, well, I got kids. And if that would have been my daughter, I would have wanted somebody to stop her. Okay. If the story is true, and if that was your daughter about to get stabbed, well, your daughter was in the wrong because your daughter came to somebody else's property to fight, to jump them. So if you getting jumped, what are you going to do? If you had a knife on you and you're getting jumped, are you going to use a knife? Or you're going to put the knife down and you're going to be a man and a woman and say, I'm going to take on these 4 or 5 people when you got a weapon in your hand. Now, if you choose to do that, I'm not saying you're wrong. But again, your eyes are seen based upon what you've experienced, not necessarily the experience itself. So when you're trusting your eyes, you're only trusting it based upon your worldview, and your worldview, ma'am, sir, is very narrow. Just like my worldview is very narrow, even though I have a litany of experience in a lot of things. But when it comes to this particular thing, it's narrow because I've never been in that situation with a badge. A badge gives you a certain amount of authority. So none of us know what that feels like, to have that type of authority, to be able to, and I'm using a bad word here, but to be able to, let me use the word perform instead of execute, to be able to perform certain tasks. So again, it's narrow. And even if again, I've broken up many a fight. And even if, in my experience, I'm still limited to find out what was going on in that. Another thing one of the officers told me is that not only are officers trained to preserve their life, but to preserve the life of others. So if he assumed and said, hey, I feel like this girl is about to take this other girl's life, he didn't have the advantage that we had in order to be able to have the information to be able to assess what our eyes were seeing, if that makes sense. So he didn't have the example. He didn't have the benefit of saying, okay, this is the girl that called, so let me make sure I'm protecting her. He didn't have that. He didn't have the information to say, well, she's only 15 years old. He didn't have that. He didn't have the information to say that she was a nice young lady and she was a straight A student. He didn't have that information. So again, being able to have different streams of thought outside of the thought that you only know is very important when assessing and making opinions about things. And so when we see that, we have to recognize those lenses. Every lens is not the same. I had very bad experiences with the police for a long time, until I went on a coaching retreat or coaching seminar with a police officer. And while we were going on that trip, he made a statement to me to this day that I would never forget. He says, in my line of duty, I see the worst in people every day. I can't imagine what type of trauma and things that is on a person, even though they chose to do that profession, what that does to a person if you see the worst in people every day. Now, I know a lot of people on here were like, Ken, it sounds like you You caping for the police. By no means am I doing that. I'm saying is, what lens are you looking through, and what eyes can you trust to see? To a person, each one of those police officers, all of them black, almost said the same thing. One thing that has to change is they have to start viewing us as a threat. They have to stop viewing us as a threat. Especially the lady officer, and it was the first time her and I had, other than high and by, had a serious this conversation, and I just felt her emotion and her remorse and her tiredness. And she was saying that one of the things that she has to deal with is being a woman, being a black woman in a predominantly white male organization, and how she was saying how they go do, and she did like diversity training, but she said, I'm not the person that need to go to diversity training. It's them. I know how to handle my people. And that's something that needs to be talked about, to be able to further our lens. So therefore, when we see certain things, that we can have more middle ground, because one of the last things I want to leave us with is that for my police officers who feel like they're being attacked because you're a good cop, and you make statements like, well, I don't come on your job and tell you what you have to do, and you don't know the first thing about my job. You right. You won thou wow. I don't know. However, we know what we need in our community. In order to really make this thing right, the thoughts and wishes of the people have to play a major part of how we want to be policed or be served. That's really, protecting, so like served and protected. In the medical field, there's a theory, and things are going on, especially when it comes to care, is having the patient be involved in their own treatment. And so if a doctor prescribes you certain medicine, you're able to tell that doctor, like, hey, I understand that this is what it's doing, but this is doing something else. And I don't like this something else that it's doing. Can we find a different way, as far as medicine? You may talk to your doctor and say, hey, I understand you want me to take this, but hey, I would like to approach this from a different holistic approach. What are some other? You have an active role in your healthcare. So how come we can't have an active role in our protection, in our service? Why does it have to be so advantageous? We have to understand, you have to understand the history of why the police was even invented. That's something that's not a refutable. I mean, okay, everything can be refuted, but there are several scholarly books and essays on the formation of what the police started out as. And the system started out to keep Africans enslaved, and to go out and recapture enslaved Africans. That was the formation of what the modern day police looks like. So the system within itself is started from that was oppressive. The second thing that I learned this in criminology is that criminology started out as the study of Black people in crime. Like, it started, so everything along the way started to our disadvantage. It started to our disadvantage. And just like, and we'll have the health conversation another day, but one thing I give, whether you think, whatever you feel of Dr. Fauci, that's on you. But the one thing I give that man credit for, he said, I understand that there is a blatant distrust of the medical field by African Americans. And it's because of these egregious things that happen. I understand it. He said, I have to recognize that. He can't understand it because he's not Black, but I have to recognize it, and I empathize. However, these are the steps that I believe that we can do to try to bring that trust. See, that's what he talked about. Trust. Maybe we need those kind of conversations in these particular police departments. Look, if somebody break into my house, I'm calling the police. Like, I'm calling them. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, no, I'm calling the police. Somebody break into my car. I'm calling the police. There are certain police officers who help me out immensely. So I'm not anti-police, but I want the conversation to be able to be had so that we can get a better service. But as we look at these particular things, please be mindful of the lens that you're looking at this whole thing through. Please be mindful of your place and what you and your experience. It's okay. You don't have to be right. It doesn't have to be an either or, and it doesn't have to be, at the end of the day, a life was lost that shouldn't have been lost. At the end of every conversation, I told all the police officers I talked to, I said, I understand what you're saying. I'm not agreeing. I mean, I agree with, because a lot of it, some of it I don't know, but it still don't sit right with me. I have more information than I had yesterday. It still don't sit right with me. However, I went out to seek information. I didn't go in there debating them and what about this and what if, what is. No. One of my officers, people talk about the taser. I sent one of my friends a video of a white man with a knife wheeling away. And these officers tased him. And so the first thing he said was, he looked at the video. He said, well, first of all, this is not the United States, because this is a video that's being circulated through Twitter and Instagram saying, see, they can do it, but how come they couldn't do that to her? He said, well, this further proves my point that tasers are not 100%. Now, I understood what he's saying. He knows what he's talking about. I don't. He knows, I don't. But I did say, I understand that. I said, but man, there has to be some type of less lethal way of doing some things, man. And he said, in good faith, that the officer could have tackled that young lady. He said he could have done that. He could have done that. He said, but what if he landed on the knife and he got cut, or in doing it, somebody else got, hurt and damaged with the knife? He said, and I want to make sure I'm paraphrasing, but I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. He said that the police department would cover him as far as saying, because he acted out of good faith, but it still could have been some other civil lawsuits brought on and stuff like that. So if that's going through your mind, again, for me, I would have handled the situation totally different. I would. Ken would have handled it different, but I am not deputized. I'm not a police officer, and I haven't gone through the formal training to be able to, who said it? Benny Siegel said it when he was talking to Charlemagne. Charlemagne was saying something. He's like, you're not even qualified to ask that question. There are certain things I'm not even qualified to act like I know what I would do. I'm not qualified. And so, but I only qualify what I see based upon my experience that I've been through. So hopefully that just give you something to talk about, give you something to think and reconsider. Whatever side you fall on, it's to me, we can all say it was a life that deserved to live. People say, well, we need to talk about the youth, or we need to hold black people. Yes, stop with that bull crap. Every time a person talk about black on black crime and black people need to hold black people, listen, stop it. Now that's one thing I'll say, stop it, because you keep furthering an incorrect narrative. All crime happens in proximity. All crime happens in proximity. Please understand, it only became black on black because it was politicized. Please do your research on that. However, with that being said, we are making these arguments based on a utopian way of thinking about how life should be versus how life is. Some people have never been in a fight. They've 30, 40, 50, 60 years old and ain't never been in a fight in their life. And guess what? That's good. That don't make, because other people have been in a fight, that doesn't make them better or worse, but it gives them a different perspective of how they would think. A person who's never been in a fight says, hey, I use my analytical and communication skills to be able to diffuse these situations, and I didn't have to resort to violence. Guess what? That's cool. The best way to win a fight is never to be in one. All right? That's my thing now. Now, yes, if I come to it, yes, but I ain't trying to fight nobody if I don't have to. Because I've been in the fight. I've been in fights, and I understand how that feels. after you finish, whether you win or lose, it's just like, man. And you could have looked back like I could have handled that so much differently. But that's the lens. So in closing, I want you to understand the lens that you're going through when we're seeing these type of things. Prayers and condolences to the Bryant family. Prayers and condolences to the Bryant family. Because that's the most important thing. We don't know what she would have been in life. We'll never know. I have four boys, and I don't know what I would do if my children were at the other end of any type of violence, whether it be from someone in authority or somebody on the street. We can probably say we can cancel the podcast because. So I pray that we make good decisions. I pray that we make good choices. One of the things I've been saying, a good friend of mine, we got this slogan, man, just leave people alone. Just leave people alone. Be quick to say, I'm sorry. You know, I was in Atlanta, bumped into a couple people. Hey, man, my fault, bro. I'm good. I don't want no trouble from nobody. Don't make me soft. Don't make me weak. If anything else, because my goal and objective is to see my family every day. That's my goal and my objective. So I just want to leave you with peace. I want to leave you with love. I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to my YouTube viewership. Thank you to the Facebook viewership. Thank you to all my listeners on all of my streaming platforms. The actual audio of this podcast will be uploaded by Friday, so you can go back, dissect it, say what you like, say what you didn't like. Thank you for those people who chimed in. Next time we'll have hopefully more people chiming in because I do want to make it interactive. Please, 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 please go to any of my social media, which is Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Ken's Corner. Please make sure you like, subscribe to those so you can always be updated. Please go to my YouTube at Ken's Corner Podcast. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you'll get notified every time that we upload. I upload because I upload often, so you can always be up to date with that. You can, again, I already did that. You can interact with me on my website, which is www.kenscorner.co. That's www.kenscorner.co. Again, the Cash App is floating down. If you like what you hear, if you want to support, help me to take this podcast to the next level, I would greatly appreciate it. But other than that, I think I took care of everything. Yeah. At the end, I love, I trust, and I respect you. This is Ken of Ken's Corner Podcast. Peace.